This is the Cathode Ray Podcast with Steve and Lewis. Looking good. Ladies and gentlemen, although YouTube statistics tell me it's mostly gentlemen, nevertheless, welcome to episode 37 of the Cathode Ray Podcast. I'm here with my friend Steve Nutter. It's been a million years since he and I have had a catch-up chat. We're going to talk about what we've been doing, just get back to it. So, Steve, how you been, mate? It's been weeks.
I know, man. It has been weeks, and yeah, definitely, we're stuck in the YouTube algorithm of male dominant viewership. I think I'm lucky if I get 1% female viewership on anything.
And nevertheless, you are welcome.
But
welcome.
Yeah,
if you happen to be here, it's all good.
I know there
it's
are some women out there,
it's
but
not all just smelly boys. Hopefully,
yeah. But yeah, man, it's been a wild last couple of weeks. We've Lewis and I, we kind of jumped in and had these plans to have more interviews this year, as we were getting into these, like, second season, we kind of said, for this show. And we did our last interview, and then we just kind of had things fall apart for some different reasons, which we'll go into because they're kind of funny stories. And I don't know about you, but, man, I was sitting around thinking how time to me now in like the last, 5 years has seemed like it just keeps speeding up as opposed to when I was maybe in my early 20s and I felt like days were too long or something.
Is this what happens when you get older? Is it the factor of getting older that, so what,
right?
You lived through a whole bunch of years, so this is another year.
And maybe it's that coming closer to your inevitable expiration date, I guess, and realizing, right?
Hey, you've got deep here. We're friggin' 1 minute and 50 seconds in. Steve's already gone for the philosophical deep end.
We're just saying that. I'm just saying personally, I feel like there's never enough time in the day anymore. So
sure,
it's like we just, things keep going, and then I'm like, holy crap, it's been so long since you and I have even got together.
Look, I hear what you're saying. It's interesting. It's all just phases of your life as well. So, for example, I'm almost in an opposite phase right now. Actually, I'm in a phase where I'm doing less business deliberately, and there's some wrap-ups to go on there. And I'm actually having more time in my day, and sometimes I don't know what the hell to do with myself. And that's because I've been working my ass off for 10 years. When you do that for so long and there are the transitory periods. So I'm deliberately in one of those periods. I'm about to have a really busy week. We're going to go work with this comedian Jimmy Carr and bring him to 3 cities around here. But for the last 2 weeks, I haven't had a job. I haven't had any work on. And I've just been sitting around playing Gran Turismo 6 on the PlayStation 3. And I'm a 42-year-old adult. That's what I've done with my time. My soul needs it, though. It's for my soul. So,
yeah, I hear you. I kind of did the same thing, which I didn't even tell you because we were like, yeah, let's try filming. I was like, it's not working. All right, I'm going out of town, and I just like bolted with the family.
Like, where are you going, Steve?
To Florida for I want to say, it wasn't a long trip. It was only from Tuesday. I left Tuesday after the kids were done with their school. And then we stayed till Sunday. But it was an extremely long trip from where we were because, as most of you probably know, right about now, there's a big area of Florida that has been hit by the hurricane. And so that's not obviously the area that we were going to. This was kind of a last-moment trip where it was somebody that had rented a big house, said, hey, if they're old friends of ours, said, hey, if you want to bring the kids and there's a whole floor on this house that no one would use, so you could go and stay there. So we're like, oh, yeah, sure. So we just decided to drive down there, and it was, it was 14 hours of driving. So I went through, I went from Virginia to North Carolina to South Carolina to Georgia to Alabama down to Florida. So that's how many states we had to go through.
Right on.
And a lot of driving, a lot of windshield time. And then you get there and you hang out, and then you like I was telling you, you're just too old to sit there and sit on the beach and pound Bud Lights all day.
Was it sunny? How warm was it?
Oh man, it was beautiful. That was good. It was not. It was not like overly hot too, not overly humid. The seas were nice and calm. I never seen it. It was the clearest water I'd ever seen down there. You could go out to roughly. You could go out to where you're waist deep, but it was super shallow, most of it. So it's long, long ways. And you could see clear 100% down to the bottom. So that was really like something out of the Caribbean. And I imagine that's partially because of the hurricane activity clearing up a bunch of water. And then like the next day, a bunch of jellyfish were there that were like dying and spawning, which was crazy. Huge
doing
jellyfish.
what jellyfish do. Sure.
Well, they weren't even like they were already like dead, just rolling around, and then you'd see like millions of little tiny jellyfish floating around if you got real close to the water. It was so clear and
cycle of life.
Yeah, it was nuts. So kids were
The
there.
theme
Had a
of
good
this
time.
episode. Some jellyfish
Yeah.
died, and then oh my god, and then it was reborn again. Oh, it's speaking to my soul.
Yeah, so that was a nice getaway for a couple of days, especially with the constant barrage of things that I feel like is bad news every time you turn around the corner with anything. So it's good to get away and kind of rebalance. But yeah, so I guess there's that. You know, we could get into some cool stories here. I don't know. Maybe something that would be a little bit fun here to start off with is let's go back just before this trip, and we have been talking with. Which I don't care. I mean, I'm sure it's cool if we talk about it, but we have been talking with Ron or the Handlebar Gamer about coming on and talking and doing an episode. And, of course, you know, it's really not always that easy to coordinate this stuff. So I had a plan. A couple Mondays ago and this was, we were scheduled for a Tuesday with Ron, I think. And the Monday or whatever it was, the Monday I was like, well, I have this day open, so I'm going to go to a store called MicroCenter. And I don't know have you ever heard of that store?
Only through YouTube videos.
Right.
That's a thing, right? Like Radio Shack or some sort of kind of modern version of that.
Correct. They sell PC parts, but they also sell all the soldering equipment that I like use, you know, things you could just not really you could go buy in store. So there's only one that's near the Washington D.C. area from me, which is a little over 2 hours. And my family was out of town. They were actually coming back from a trip where they went to visit my in-laws, and so they were coming back on this Monday. They had school off. They were driving back. I was like, well, they're gone the last day, I'm going to go to MicroCenter. And I took my junker Jeep. I have all these vehicles here at the house, and I have no idea why I picked this junker Jeep. Like, it's always given me headaches on any long trip. But I was hesitant to take this other car because I was telling Lewis here in my state I have to get it inspected, and they're backed up.
It's pretty normal to have to get an old car inspected.
Right,
sure.
So it's annual inspection. So I'm a month past expiration, but I've had it scheduled, and it's like next Wednesday they finally are going to inspect it for me. It's so ridiculous. Okay. So anyway, I was like, well, I'll just take this one that's in good standing, even though it's a total junker. Like, it'll overheat. And so I drive this daggum thing out to D.C. I hit the first bit of traffic. I'm not kidding. I made it 2 hours and 2 hours and 10 minutes, which is like 15 minutes from where I was going. And the thing just overheats. And not only overheats, it's like spraying something. I was smelling the coolant. So I get out and a line. I pull over at this exit and in this neighborhood. And it's a nice neighborhood, and I stop and I look out and I'm like, holy crap, I've lifted the hood up, and it's just got a rupture, spewing coolant everywhere. And of course, if I turn the engine on, it's going to skyrocket in temperature. So I had to get it off so it wouldn't blow up and completely. So then I was like, well, screw my MicroCenter day, right? So the MicroCenter day was canceled. I had to get my dad to come pick me up 2.5 hours out in D.C. And he was like, what the hell are you doing driving your junker out to D.C. when you know this car, it's a Jeep Commander from 2006 with it had 271,000 miles on it.
All right.
Which is a lot of miles. I don't know, kilometers. That's
it's a lot.
Quite a bit. So it's not normally going to go that long. So
what happened to the car? So is it still there or what?
Yeah, no. So I had to go to like an auto parts store, and I tried to get the black RTV silicone, which I love to use inside CRTs, to secure stuff. So I'm like, give me some of that silicone from this auto parts store, which I literally like stopped the car, got it cooled down for 30 minutes, and then like found an auto parts store, which was half a mile from there, and like barely made it there. So I made it to the auto parts store.
Oh, the car, you limped it.
Yeah,
you were able to limp the car there.
So I got to that store, and I got the silicone, and I started slapping it all over that stuff, and I got some fluids, And I had to sit there for like 2 hours just waiting for the silicone to harden.
So,
I got
so
back
what was
in
it,
the
like
car.
a pipe or something had come off? You don't been
Yeah,
able to
well,
identify
no,
the pipe.
The pipe had a pinhole in it, and it was just shooting.
So like a
out
problem
coolant.
with the like the you. I'm
was
impressed
it was
that you were
coolant
able
system.
to do it, because everything that you've told me in this story up until this moment, I've been there. I've been there on the side of the road, on the side of the highway. If it's literally calling dad, the fluid that you're like, look, what the fuck is all this fluid that's been... At one stage, we had transmission fluid going out the exhaust, out the back, and it was all over. We're like, why is the trailer covered with this shit? And we're like, oh, we've blown the exhaust, the transmission, sorry, the automatic transmission. And so I've been there in all of those moments, even with old, fairly old junkers as well. But my story stops at, I was able to fix it. Like, I can't fix shit in a car or anything. So you were able to identify what the problem was. It was just, and it wasn't anything major. It was just this pinhole that was...
Well, I don't know. So here's what happened.
Okay.
Like, I smothered in the stuff, and then I was like, ooh, after a while it got hard, and I'm like, hey, Dad, my dad's already on the way, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with this thing. I was like, it probably, I don't know, we'll see if it overheats or not. And so I sat there, and I waited, and he showed up, and we looked at it, and it looked like it was hardened. However, I was like looking at this map. I was like, there's a gas station. If we stay on this road, there's a gas station a half a mile from where we are. If there's any problems, you follow me and we'll stop at the gas station. And so I got in a car, and even though it was fine and I had the coolant filled and everything, it immediately started overheating again. Okay. And see, it had done that in the past where it would just randomly overheat. I mean, the thing had all kinds of like little issues with it that it was like anything, it was ready to go. Like the silicone thing, I've done that trick before, and it's been fine, where it was like, I just covered the thing in silicone, it was fine. And later on, maybe the repair worked that I did, but the problem is I just like, the car is so worthless at this point. Like, if I had it even back at my home and I listed it for sale, nobody in their right mind would give me more than $500 for it. Okay. So I know it's like, well, it's a running car, but yeah, I'm telling you, this thing, you opened the hood and half of it was covered in silicone where I epoxied the darn things, the leaks shut. And it was ready to, it leaked oil like crazy. Like you would have to put oil in it, but it's still
So what did you do? So you're driving around.
So, yeah, I drove it around. I got to that. It started overheating again. So I pulled over into the gas station. And we're
you got to that gas station.
Yeah.
You got up the road. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
and
always
so
the risk. You're like, I remember like driving some laps around that little neighborhood or wherever, like say your first convenience store, before I go out on the freeway, because I'm like, oh shit, if I'm on the freeway, it's real, and I'm not next to a hot dog,
Yeah, and if the freeway where DC is, the cops don't like that. You'll end up paying. They'll tow it and send you these bills and stuff. So it's a big mess. So we couldn't get on the freeway, but there's a highway that's smaller that runs parallel to the freeway. So we were going to take that. But we got down the road, got into the gas station, it had overheated again, and I was like, forget it. I can't drive this back home. I'm going to have to just ride with you. Well, thankfully, there was a side street right there next to the gas station, because if I had left it there, they would have towed it.
Yeah.
But I was able to parallel park in an open spot on this busy side street that had no, there was cars parked there for the last decade that haven't been moved, right? It's like the only free parking spot. People aren't moving once they get it. So I got in one of these spots, and I was like, well, that's good. At least we got it in that spot. I'm just going to go with you home and try to figure this out. So the whole time I'm like, what am I going to do with this stupid car down here? And again, this is 2.5 hours from my house where this car is now, and I have to leave it. I have to go leave it. I have to go help my family get unpacked, and I have to deal with it the next day. So I'm talking to my dad, and we're like, quoting out things like renting a trailer, to go, or a car hauler.
Yeah,
and then he's got a truck, right? He's got a truck that will pull it,
right?
But we find out that the Jeep is too heavy for his truck to legally pull it, so they won't rent you the car hauler unless you have a bigger truck. So it was going to be like $500 to rent a big truck plus the car hauler, plus then you have gas, and doing this whole thing all day to get a car back, and then it's like a junker. Again, it's going to blow up again, and I can't sell it for that much money. So I was sitting there, and I was like, good grief, what do? Do I give it to charity? Maybe. And then I said, well, I just looked online. I was like, where is the nearest junkyard? Like a junk yard for cars. And there's got to be one down there. So I started looking at that, and I found these guys that go around and they buy junk cars. And they have a tow truck, and I call him, and I'm like, what's the deal here, man? I've got this Jeep. I've got it. He's like, you have a title? I said, yes. It's clear. And I said, it might run. I don't know, but I'm done with it. It's too many miles. I don't want to deal with it. What do you guys pay? And he's like, well, if it has its catalytic converter on it, that's all we pay for. So the most we give is $300. So if it has a catalytic converter, you'll get between $100 and $300. And he said, other than that, it's our cost to come out there.
Yeah.
So we don't charge you to tow it back to the junkyard or anything like that. That's just part of it. And if we buy it, we'll give you cash there. So I was like, sure, man, meet me down there the next day. This day. I was like, I'll be there in 2 hours. So I drove there. I met this guy. He got under the car, started looking at it. And I was like, man, I don't know. Is it still there? Because I was like, I know I've had a half a dozen mufflers put on this thing in 270 miles. I was like, I don't know about the catalytic converter. And so he's like, yeah, it's there. The son of a gun gave me $200 for it. I didn't even bargain.
Yeah.
I didn't bargain with him. I was like, all right, get it. Take it.
He's got you, dude. You came 2 hours.
No,
Your car is stuck there.
I was like, I don't care. I was like, what am I going to do? Say, no, 220. I was like, so forget it. I was like, take it. I gave it to him. I cleared all my stuff out of it. And so I got rid of the Jeep. That unfortunately, that wasn't really the end I wanted to have for this poor Jeep. But that's what I did. And there's a second half of this story that kind of gets a little bit better. As while I was down in D.C., I decided to go down and do some other types of shopping. So I don't know if we want to talk about the car anymore, but that's kind of the end of this section on this Jeep. How it's just that it's died. I sold it to the junk guy, and I got $200 cash for it. And
dude, you
not
like
expecting
that's such a great like. You sound like such a southern hillbilly with all the cars. It's awesome, bro.
Oh, my gosh.
And again, I've been there as well. I'm Australian southern hillbilly.
Oh, yeah.
I've been
That's
towing
exactly
cars.
right.
That's a crazy story that they wouldn't rent you the trailer because they're like, yo, you're not like the weight. Like, first of all, truck. Like, you Americans have friggin' huge trucks. The small American truck is like a goddamn European tank. Like, I've towed all sorts of cars. Like, a car can tow a car. Like, no problems. And I had always that American thing of going, it's some fucking just land, like the Jawas in Star Wars rolling along the desert and that huge thing. Like, that's what American trucks look like to us. And that some guy looks at that and goes, no, mate, it's too small. Nah, sorry. Jesus, the thing's big enough to tow away the fucking Tower of Liberty.
That's the
but
thing.
no.
It's like they said no. They said and that's so no go on that. But that was probably a good thing because again, if I'd have got it back to town, then what was I going to do? Pay to fix it? I didn't ever want to pay to fix it. So I was like, this way, I'm not investing any more money into the car. I could just be done with it. And then I was like, so I was telling my wife, she was a little disappointed, but. What are you gonna do?
She was hoping to get a good top dollar for this thing?
Well, no, she just like sentimental. But we because we bought this car and I mean I paid it off and like
okay.
So I mean I had I bet it was used. I bought it like 60,000 miles, so I put 200,000 miles on it.
Okay.
And I had it for like over probably 10 years, something like that. So. Anyway, and funny enough, we had to get a new car because that was the newest car I had, that junker. My other cars are older. They had less miles, but they're way older. So
you're a real catch, Steve Nutter.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. So we had been shopping for cars forever. And so I finally got her this new Audi, or not new. I mean, 2015. That's like new, right? 7 years.
You don't want to buy a new car. That's
no.
Game.
So I mean, it took forever to find this car because I wanted something that hadn't been wrecked, was a good car, and his car is great. Like I was super impressed after taking this 14-hour trip. That thing rides awesome. But
you took the Audi to
especially-
Florida.
Oh yeah, for like the
nice.
highway
Yeah.
riding, it's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
awesome. It's got like the last owner had it so decked out that they had all this satellite radio that they paid for life for. So
okay.
I get all that. It's got all this built-in music library already installed in it, navigation, all this stuff that I never had. So yeah, that was nice. So thankfully that was already here. And it was just between that period, this was going to be one of my junker cars, was this Jeep, and then I just, got rid of it that way that we just discussed. So that all happened, and the Jeep is gone. So we could transition over here to the better, funnier story, which is, or more relaxed part of things, and that's like when I was down in D.C., I had discussed this with you that they have. So here's in my area where I live, the state of Virginia. You're allowed to now possess, and smoke marijuana as personal amounts, like
It's legal for you.
recreationally,
Okay.
and medically. So there's no there are rules. Obviously, you're not going to go around driving, and doing
course.
it, or there's limits on how much you can have at once, which is good. So. But if you have that and you're not doing anything with it, you're fine. So you go the problem is that rule has just been in place for literally about 14 months or maybe about 20 months. And there's the problem is there's nowhere to buy it in the state. They set up that rule, but they said, you can't buy it anywhere till 2025. They got to get all this stuff ready. So there's no place to go buy it.
But you can drive it over a border yourself.
Well, yeah, if you can obtain it, then you're allowed to have it. So, or you could grow it. You're allowed to grow a certain number of plants as part of the law. It's a little interesting. So they say this, but I was looking, I was like, goodness gracious, where's the nearest place? And funny enough, D.C. has these really interesting rules. I don't even know if they're considered laws because I don't think they are. I think they're just like bills that are proposed bills that have semi-passed or something.
But there's people selling it. You can go buy it in DC.
Here's the thing. In D.C., they don't sell it. They give it away for free. Right?
Okay.
It's one of these back deal alleys.
What is it,
And
buy a
I can't
hamburger
please.
and get
yes,
a quart?
exactly.
Something like this?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
I will sell you this 2-day-old nasty hamburger for $95, and it will come with 3.5 grams of killer marijuana for free.
Sure.
It's funny. So when you're looking at this stuff, you're like, this makes no sense. What the heck is this stuff? And you go down there, and it literally is like that. You go in, and they're like, welcome to our store. They card you, make sure you're 21.
Sure.
And it looks like a fancy art gallery, and that's what they say. They're like, this is an art gallery.
Okay. Is there art? Describe the room. What is there art on the wall?
So there's their branding. I mean, and then there was this whole. It was actually kind of cool. They had these skateboard decks of just generic, like Supreme, and then they're look trendy. Have some screens on the wall. It looked like any kind of dispensary you'd probably see in another city. Honestly, actually they had a tape player in the background, like a retro tape player deck. That was kind of cool. Boombox. On the back behind their
and
shelves.
What do they advertise? What is their sort of projection?
So yeah, you go and it's exactly what I said. You go and they give you an NFT code or something. It's like a download code for an image, and then you're allowed to buy up to a certain amount of stuff. And
now is the NFT? Is it an NFT just because that's like a hip thing to do or something?
You don't actually get to keep it. Well, see, other stores will give you a postcard.
Oh, okay. Because I was about to say,
I believe this is just to eliminate waste and to make it as they give you a receipt with the code on it. I think it's just to make it this is technically following the rules.
Because I was wondering whether something like an NFT, which also exists in a legally dubious and dubious financial area, that they're like, oh yeah, this NFT is 95. What are you talking about? Of course, this NFT, NFTs are worth things.
Because it's
and it's worth $95,
right?
So it's not. It's so obviously not a scam. Where if you give me a postcard for $95, obviously they're doing it. I wasn't sure if it was some of that shenaniganery, but maybe not.
So yeah, I mean, there could be any shenaniganery going on. I mean, what do you think? Listen to that. Does that just not sound like the craziest thing?
So when you walk into the store, is there marijuana? Can you see marijuana anywhere?
So yes, when you walk in,
okay,
yeah,
you can see it. So
when you go in, you go in and like again, you're going past the bouncer, and there's be a little bit of an open area with like nothing in it, almost empty. And then you go past that area, and you might get to a counter where they'll have some stuff under the counters or in these glass counters. And this is what the real trendy thing to do is put them in glass counters. And so this place ahead of time, I had already been on their website. Because I didn't want to. I mean, where was I had to find it? So
of course,
this was in like the middle of downtown DC in the shopping area.
So a reasonable district.
Oh yeah, like it was filled with all kinds of yuppies.
Okay,
you know, just things like I'm joking, but like a bunch of trendy restaurants, bars, shops, boutiques, things like that. And then they had a huge, they were on a separate floor, but they had their own floor, second or third floor, but. Yeah, I when I got to it, I had to go park and then walk a block. And when I got to the building, a girl comes running out, and then she's like lighting up a joint right as she gets out, like she couldn't wait. And I was like, I guess this is the right place. This is the door. So got in, got out, because then I had to come back here and meet a U-Ship guy. Made it just in time for a U-Ship guy to take a PVM to a customer in Connecticut.
All right, this is a good haul. Did you at all end up at MicroCenter?
No, not this time. That's the whole ironic.
You went
thing.
All the way back, and you're like, "Well, now I'm here in Washington. Think I'll just go buy some weed. Fuck the hard disk.
I'll get some of the free weed."
Sorry, yeah, we really need to legally protect ourselves here. Okay.
No, I know. I'm just following your semantics, right? So. That was the roundabout afterwards. Yeah, I was like, forget about it. Sorry, MicroCenter. I was like, I didn't want to spend all my money there now.
What did you want? Oh, man.
That was pretty much the reason we weren't able to do that show with Ronald.
It was, yeah. So we couldn't do one with Ron. And then, I don't know, I've been focusing on stuff here for a while. I got a lot of business things to do, like spreadsheets to look at. And I'm like, I don't like it very much. But, I mean, I have people to help me. But so this week, actually, though, I've had a sort of the way that an artist's life can also sometimes go is you work a lot and then there's periods of nothing because, and that actually comes back to a topic that we've talked a lot about, which is why does my thing that you're selling me cost me so much? Well, because I only get paid once a month, if I do one gig or something like that. So I haven't been doing that much for the 2 weeks, but what we've got coming up the end of this week is Jimmy Carr. He's a British comedian. Have you ever heard of him? Do you recognize the name? He does like really deadpan sort of one-liner.
No, I mean not off the top of my head. So, but that doesn't really mean anything. I don't unless they're like super well known. I probably wouldn't know.
Oh, it's fine. He's really big on British TV. There's a panel show called 9 out of 10 Cats. He's the host of that for many years. Okay. And so yeah, no problems about that. So yeah, we're presenting him in 3 cities: Tartu, Tallinn, and then Helsinki. So it's my job I've got to book some flights, get him here. We got to get him around. He arrives at the right time. He's a busy man, so we have to get him there exactly on time.
I know this guy.
And so forth. Yeah, you've seen the face.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, he's a cool guy to hang out with. So we're doing that in 3 cities. So that will take me all the way up until Sunday. I'll go over to Helsinki. We'll get on a ferry, take 2 hours over there. We'll do 2 shows a night there and then come back. So I'm about to have a really busy week. So I've just been planning, making sure tech crews are coming. All the tickets are sold, which is really nice. That bit's good. So yeah, I've just sort of been focusing in on that. He's making sure all the plans are made for that. Yeah, when that's done, then I have a bit more time. Then in a couple of weeks, my girlfriend and I are going to Lisbon in Portugal, so it should be nice.
Portugal.
The Florida of Europe. I don't know if that's offensive. No, maybe that's probably the south of Italy. Anyway, we're going down there. I've got a conference to host down there, so they're paying for us, bringing my girlfriend. They give us the hotel. So that will be real nice at the start of November. And maybe some of our listeners will know this as well. So it's really huge news for me that Japan is opening up again. So that up until
I've been
all this
seeing
time,
tweets about it more and more and more and more. And so, go ahead.
So it's actually today. Today
Okay.
is the first day the days are open. I'm deeply, deeply jealous that I'm not there. So I'm actually thinking about going. I'm thinking about going over Christmas and New Year.
Really?
I've got the time. I've got 3 to 3.5 weeks free between my gigs. So when one gig finishes and the next one starts in January. And I think I want to go there over Christmas and New Year. It's something I used to do when I was a single guy. That's what I used to do because I don't live near my family. We're up here in the north of Europe. It's all dark and cold and shit like that. So I was like, I'm getting out of here. So for like 3 winters in a row, I spent Christmas in Japan and I love it. Now I have a girlfriend and she's not completely impressed with this plan, but I think we can do something with it.
Does she normally do something with her family there?
Yeah, they love it. They're like, her family are like a happy family that love each other and shit and are like really good with each other. And they talk, even for Estonians, they're pretty good. They talk about their emotions sometimes. They support one another. Oh my God, I can't begin to imagine such fucking things. So they're much closer to that, where I'm not so in my family. So I think I'm still going to go. It's something I like doing. And especially if Christmas is about family time to you, then it can still be kind of shitty with all the commercialism and the rah-rah-rah, and you get sick of the jingles and, going to the mall and hearing everything. So Christmas, not a big thing in Japan. Not like a little bit. I guess it's a thing. I don't want to speak too much for Japanese people, but maybe it's still a bit more of a Western thing. I don't kind of know. Or maybe it's that insane Japanese work ethic, because I think there's like 1 day off for Christmas and then 1 day off for New Year's Day. Maybe some things are half closed on New Year's Day, and that's it. Everything open. All things. So you can just go and have a regular holiday in that time, where in the West, often things are closed for particularly Christmas and New Year, that break. So many things that you want to do, or if you want to get some business done, closed, right? Open. So it's a great time, and I need to get away. So I'm going to pay a pretty penny for that flight ticket, though. Because that's flights in general. I reckon right now flights, I would say what I know of European flights, at least like 1.5 times, 50% extra than what it was before pandemic, about what you're paying at least. And
Do you have any like miles things that can help with that there?
Not really,
much.
not significantly.
Yeah.
I mean,
not
I have
enough to go to Japan.
I have my Finnair Plus points. It's so stupid. I get a fucking magazine or something these days. When my girlfriend and I took the mortgage out on this place, the bank gives you some benefits, right? And they give you some bonuses or some equivalent of points. And it was like, take a mortgage out on an apartment and we'll give you a free 6-month magazine subscription. Oh, yeah. You've really made that one worthwhile. So I'm not a big fan of points systems, but I know I'm talking to Captain Costco here. So
yeah.
But anyway, because the other problem is if we geographically look where Estonia is, and then, dear friends, look at a map and look where Japan is, you will notice that there's a big fucking country in the middle that nobody likes anymore, starts with R and ends with Soviet Union. And the problem is now that
you gotta do this.
You can't. You got to go over the top, right? You can't go across that. So it's added like 5 hours to the flight. So you've got to go.
Okay.
I think what Finnair now do is they go up and around. I'm pretty sure they don't go under.
Wow.
And that's fine, but it adds 5 hours to the flight, which of course adds cost and fuel and the
labor, everything.
Labor. So my ticket to getting to Japan from Europe is a bit more costly these days, but nevertheless, I've got enough money in the bank, so I think I'm fucking going. I wanna go. Let's see.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that have been talking. I talked to some people that were really itching to go. When I was at the conference in Connecticut, and they were talking about these, creative ways of getting around as either students or things like this, trying to get in. So I'm sure that this will all make it a lot easier.
Absolutely. Now it's properly open. You don't need
not
a
even
scam,
worry about that if you just want to go
stay. You can just go as a tourist. There's still, you got to be vaccinated and something else, but you can go and be on your own, and it's all good. So it's been 3 years since I went last. I dream about it every day. I love it, Steve, because for me it's 3 weeks on my own, and that's a recharge time for me. That
so
even
you
though
stay
I've
there that long. 3
Oh,
weeks?
dude, I'll stay maybe. Well, if I had my way, I'd be there for 3 months right now, because that's the length of a tourist visa.
Okay.
But my income is solely dependent on when I work right now as a freelancer. So I need to be available when there is someone who has a gig for me to do. So that's also why the Christmas New Year gap is good for me, because there's not so many, you finish the Christmas season and then you can have some time. So I need, I'm a like introverted only child, and that time to recharge, I guess, is really important to me. And it's a time where, like, you love retro gaming, and I love retro gaming, and anyone listening to this episode probably loves it as well. And for me, when I go to Japan, I can just do that for weeks on end, and it feels like such an indulgence. Just that I don't have to think about life. The beach, you were saying, like, how much fun is it to sit on the Florida beach and sink cold ones all day long? Well, it's good for, a day or something like that.
Like 2 days, after 2 days.
2 days, maybe.
Yeah.
I can
just throw the ball, frisbee, just hang out in the water.
Sure, fun, right? Very nice,
Nothing.
often
Relaxing.
needed for the soul.
Well, and like with that, I don't know about most people, but like you do something like that on the beach, and you're just like, my phone, I was forced to leave it just, in the house. And I wasn't looking at anything for like 8 hours at all. And then I didn't really care to go. I was so many beers in, you didn't care to go look at the phone and do anything after that. So it was,
but I can
like
do
you said,
that.
it's good to get away.
But I can do that, though. My point, though, was that a beach holiday, sure, 1 day, 2 days, maybe you can do that.
Yeah.
I can do 3 weeks every day hitting hard off secondhand stores in Japan. I'm going to hit 3 to 5 stores per day, every day, for 3 weeks, unless I'm traveling between cities. And I love it. I just can't get enough of it. Every day I wake up and I think I'm going to look through 3 to 5 more amazing Japanese secondhand stores. Who knows what the fuck they've got in the paid section, what they've got in the junk section.
Especially now, after who knows what's happened. So
I've heard some stories that certainly the pandemic created more buying in Japan with domestic buying, and it, as much as I've understood, it did spur a lot of export. So now online stores selling out, but as I've understood as well, like the stores, they're refreshed. So for me, it's just I just love it. I love just trekking around Tokyo. I love seeing what's in the stores, taking that time for myself, have a ramen, just being on my own for that time. So I'm really, I can't wait, bro.
You can't wait, but you haven't booked your ticket yet, have you?
Well,
are you working
as
on
we
that?
said, these are fine levels of diplomacy that are often needed when discussing with one's significant other, when one might want to go to do other things, for example. So, we've approached the topic at several, not been able to come to a diplomatic compromise in the middle. However, I believe with future negotiations, such things will be able to be resolved. So I'll be buying a ticket soon. So he says now.
So he says, yeah. That's why Lewis, everybody, has a girlfriend. And when you have a wife, you don't. The negotiation period has already ended. So that's
I'll tell you what, Steve. Wait,
lesson
just a
right
moment.
there.
I'm gonna go.
ahead.
While we take that one, I'm gonna get another one and
grab it. That's good.
Keep going. close the door behind me. So I'm also making progress on this room too. So what I've got over here right now, can I swing that a little bit? See, that's just a huge wall here.
Right.
So I've got IKEA curtains for that. So
Okay.
I was sort of thinking about how to soundproof it or what to do to stop some of the reverb. So my easiest and quickest solution was I just got blackout curtains from IKEA, and I'm going to mount them across that wall just like it was a window. So it still looks a little studio-y. Like they're the same ones we have in our other podcast studio downtown. So I know they sort of look a little studio-y. They're very dark gray. And it should help with the bounce sound on this wall. And then I've got a rug, and then the rest I don't quite know what to do with yet, but I'm working on it.
That's an interesting thing that like I didn't realize how good the sound was when I don't have any other sound going on, but down here in the basement, just because there's so much crap for the sound. It's open,
the wood
but there's so much
would help.
and everything bounces off, and like the old ceiling style and all this stuff, it doesn't echo at all in here. And so like you're saying, that's a good idea with the curtains because it's cost effective. I mean, you could go and buy some of that studio foam if you want, but then that's kind of expensive, I believe.
Yeah, I've got, and I have some of that. I ordered a whole bunch of it from AliExpress a while ago, but my kind of issue is how to attach it to the wall. I mean, in the studio, we glued it on, and I'm not really sure how that shit's going to come off. I'll worry about that when it comes time to deposit.
It's your house?
Yeah, but where's my house? So as well, like, I mean, yes, you can have some panels. Yes, you can, like, do you make a panel and then leave a gap and a panel and boxes? And then I just went, well, the curtains cover the whole thing. And, like, also, because what I want to do is now I've got space in the other direction. So I've got a new camera angle. So the curtains will be behind me. So they'll be a little bit of a dark backdrop with some curtains. And then I'm going to be able to face this way so I can do some videos talking to the camera, and then maybe when I'm explaining things a bit more, I've got the camera a bit far back.
Oh, cool.
Because I need to... Actually, this could segue us, because I need to finish off my video on the next video that I'm making, which is about this little box. And this is the I.O. board, the MiSTer IO board from RetroCastle. So the Chinese guy, Ivory, that makes them himself.
Did you get a whole nother MiSTer?
So it's not... I got a new I.O. board in case. He sent me an I.O. board, his custom I.O. board. Right. And then he sent me this custom case. So the reason it's small is because Ivory has integrated USB ports into the I.O. board. So...
Yes. So you don't have to have the other board under it, right?
The other board at the bottom of it. Now we've got 4 by my count.
Are those USB-Cs? What are those?
They're the whatever is on the I.O. board. I don't think they're USB-Cs. They're not. Sorry, pardon me. USB 3 or C? What did you say?
C? It looks like C.
Oh, do you mean for the power there?
Oh, no. I'm sorry. What are the inputs on the side? What are those?
They're regular MiSTer USBs. I think a USB too.
Okay. I couldn't.
But instead of having
looks like rounded.
Oh right, no.
What's those? No, I mean those.
Oh, they're vents. That's an air vent.
That's vents. That's what I was going to say.
Air vent.
Okay, yeah. I was like, what are those extra USBs? No, that's okay. That's air vents. All right.
So to get the board down, he's integrated some USBs into the I/O board, and it's really good for someone like. I understand there's a lot of people and they use a lot of them, but I'm using 1-2 maximum in my daily kind of MiSTer use.
Right. I've never had a need for really more than, I think, 2 probably most of the time.
So it makes a lot of sense to me. So to compact it down, so he's integrated USB ports into that, and he's done a few other. So you get, and then he's created this lovely brushed metal case for it, which is
that
tremendous.
Looks very nice.
Fits together real nice. What else has he done? So now the I/O board has a USB-C power connector up there.
Okay.
Because if you've got a typical MiSTer with a USB, you have this is the DE10 here, and then you have another one of these jacks above it. You need the splitter. So what Ivory has done is that this whole thing is powered from that little USB-C on the I/O board. You do not need to plug power into the DE10 Nano for this to work.
Okay.
So this is very good for people who already have a high quality USB-C charger. And in fact, to tell you the truth, I've been playing this off just a shitty regular phone charger, and it's fine because I'm not pulling too many USB amps. But otherwise, maybe people have got like a really nice Apple charger with the USB or a really nice Galaxy Samsung charger. And you don't need to buy an extra power supply, don't need to fill that one out. So this is a really also a very cost-effective solution that Ivory's done, that now if USB-C is very normal, that you've probably got some of them.
Uh-huh.
And the final thing to go with all of this is his PlayStation snack adapter. So the snack adapter, for those listening, that's an adapter that will allow low-level, latency-free connection of your real peripherals. And so this is a PSX snap adapter. So what has it got? It's got your regular ports, player 1, player 2 here.
Yes.
These connectors on top are for a memory card. So
that's what I was going to say. There's what about the memory card? There's memory card support?
Yep. So those two, they stick
I see.
vertically down there. So it holds that. He's also got this, which is, I haven't tested it myself, but that's for composite out for light guns. So that'll give you your light gun support that you need. And what I like about this design is this is the MiSTer IO board, and that's usually where snack adapters go into this one port here. And that's all the snack adapter needs, right? It only needs to communicate via this one special, you see there, it says user port, not USB.
Yeah.
But what Ivory's done is put a plug-in for a second USB, and it goes in like that. So the second USB is not needed by the board. Sorry, is not needed by the snack adapter.
Out.
So it's passed through, so you don't lose a USB port, and that is solid. That's 2 USBs and a PCB, like no problems, right? No little dangly things fucking hanging off the end.
Wow.
So that's a really nice. This is how I play MiSTer now. This is it.
So that's great. Yeah, that's a really good design. Definitely.
It's really nice what he's done.
So that's a video you're working on is on that?
Yeah. So just an unboxing and a demonstration. And, well, basically I could just chop in the last 3 minutes because that's going to be basically the second part of my video. Just me explaining
just
this.
You could just chop in that part from our show and do that. It's a good idea. You don't even have to cut it. You just put it there in an explanation of us.
Here I am recording shit twice like an idiot. No. I'm just going to type that in. So, yeah, just an explanation of that. I was also trying to analyze. I feel like whenever you start commenting on video quality online, you start getting into very tricky territory. Because as soon as you say, oh, something is great, or this has high quality, and then someone's always going to be like, did you analyze it? Or, this is actually 1 milliamp of power more, this green of the... So I'm deliberately trying to stay out of that area. So my analysis and the way that I worked this out was I used it on my nice 20-inch LCD, and I got a magnifying glass out, and I just compared the old IO board and this IO board, and eyeballed it with a magnifying glass because you can see the pixels, right? So and that's all I want to do. I am not qualified to analyze the output of this IO board any further than eyeballing it with a magnifying glass. So if someone does care about, levels on the oscilloscope or something like that.
Yeah, go for it. Let them do it.
Yeah, let them do it. Excellent. Then please do. Because you just know someone's going to one-up you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They always want to. Yeah. Well, I had some interesting things happen. I mean, I just finished a video. I came back to town. I had a couple videos shot, and man, it's like that time thing. I had one that I was able to easily get done yesterday, and I got a thumbnail from Mason. I was able to get it out. And now you've talked to him some, I think, on Twitter too, but Mark from the Retro channel, he sent me a DM saying, "Hey man, I just like watched your new video, and I got in the chat, and there's somebody spamming it with the Telegram scam."
Oh, okay.
And sure enough, I was like, "Thanks." And I got in there and I looked, and man, somebody had gone in with Telegram Retro Tech and had replied to every single comment, telling them that they'd won a prize. And so that was something. I had to go in and ban that channel from the channel, and then so thankfully he told me it happened. Like, it was within like 5 minutes of them doing it, and so YouTube removed all the comments. But I couldn't imagine. I mean, my channel, you know, what if you had like, golly, those big channels that have that trouble is.
You should be happy.
Be a real pain in the ass.
You should be happy.
But that was the thing. These guys are like, you made it big time when you get the Telegram scammers. And I was like, well, I guess you could say that. And I was laughing kind of two ways. But yeah, that was interesting. And then I've got another one that I'm finishing up now that I lost my last scene from. And so I'm like, great, now I got to go back and reshoot it. But I did get all the important stuff. It was just like my talk about the video scene.
What's the?
So
can you tell us the title or the topic of the new one? What is it?
Well, yeah, this one is like. So here's the deal: buying eBay. The truth is, if you're just a schmuck, Joe Schmo, don't know much, buying CRTs on eBay is not a good idea.
Sure.
Okay. Like, and that's the idea here. Not the vast majority. Your chances of having a good experience at this point are probably under 50%. First off, there's obviously the damage that could happen in shipping and then having to deal with a return. That happens a lot. But not only that, this video is trying to show how I got this monitor in. I mean, it was advertised as tested, working. And it wasn't cheap. I mean, I can't get them for cheap anymore. I have to pay like $400+, and that's what I consider a good deal to get one myself.
What sort of monitor was it?
It was a 14M2U, so it was a PVM, so a good one, right? And I got it, and it had all kinds of little issues with it. That, like, if you just bought this thing, you would probably be crying. Like, if you finally got it turned on, it had the remote. Like, it had the system engaged where the remote lockout was still on it. So if you didn't know how to disengage that, you wouldn't even be able to switch the inputs properly on the monitor. And then it had just a crap ton of magnetism on the tube where you couldn't degauss it. I had to, I mean, thankfully my big boy took it away, degaussing wand. But so it's just like stuff like that. And that's always the case. There's always something. Even if it comes in, there's always something, and then you have to get it serviced. There's always going to be somebody that's going to have to come and service it, because you're never, even if you get it, it's kind of like the only people that should really be buying these things are people who are willing to probably work on them some, really, and accept that. Otherwise, you need to try. The only way you should really do it is if you could go kind of in person, if that's even possible. But it's really, really difficult now because everything is overpriced on eBay just about.
So if I understand your advice that you're giving, that if you are buying a professional monitor online, and let's say use eBay as a substitute for online, and you can't see it in person first. If you are just buying it online and you're not buying it from a known professional, you Save on Pat, I don't know, or other, maybe Andy.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're just buying it off some fucking rando on eBay, you should assume that this monitor will need service.
Yeah. And
that's what it's down to, right? Like, you don't just buy a PVM anymore from a rando. If it says nothing about it, you should assume that PVM is going to need some level of service.
Yeah,
that's what you say.
You should assume that, because again, unless it's got where you can actually see stuff on it, and there are listings from other gamers that have got things that have been serviced. I'm just saying, like, if you're like, gosh, I got to have one and I want to get it on eBay, I don't know. The problem is, it would be nicer for people like me to be able to go on eBay, buy all these crappy monitors for a little bit decent a price, and not have to sell them. For $1,000 marked up over all this ridiculous price to begin with because we're having to buy things at a higher rate now than what it has been over the last couple of years, and it's harder to get anything, and you're getting to the bottom of the barrel with some of these sometimes, and you're getting very bad items, and that's again if it survives shipping, really, and so we're talking. I believe overall, wholeheartedly, that less than half the monitors that I get that are like ready to use, right? Like you could use it, maybe 40% of them you could use for a while and be pretty satisfied with, but you still would have paid $400 for something that the geometry's not looking great on. It's going to be dirty, and stuff like that.
So a buyer should be prepared that you're either going to have to send it off to someone, or how do you feel about your ability to fix that as well? You're going to have to get into a service menu beyond the regular one, open it up, adjust some pots, and then from there it just gets worse and worse. Then it's caps, then it's convergence inside. Then I mean, how familiar, how able are you to do that? You need to assume that, or I guess like how much then are you willing to accept bad geometry?
Right. It's just like anything.
Yeah.
These are almost like we always like to talk about. This was kind of one of the things we wanted to talk with Ron more about, was how like the comparison of classic vehicles and hot rods and like chopper, custom. All these are hobbyist things for the most part. Custom motorcycles, anything like that. How you're not all at this point. We're not buying a perfect example, right? And it's like, how much servicing on this unit do you want to put up with, or how many little wrong parts in it? I mean, it's like you buy a car and it's like, well, not everything on a car has been completely replaced. You've got something that's only going to last a little bit longer and other parts. It's going to be the same thing with these machines, because just like a vehicle, they have thousands of components in them, and they're all pushing 20 years almost. It's like the newest ones were in the late 2000s. Well, that's beyond 15 years at this point. So there's always going to be the idea of some level of servicing.
I'm going to need, actually, I think I need your help a little soon. So I've noticed with my 20-inch BVM here, I think it's got a minor convergence problem. That when I pull up, let's say, the 240 test suite, and we're seeing the color bars, so red, green, and blue, I mean, amazing. Of course, all the things that every little fanboy loses his mind over. Looks amazing. White has a problem on, I think is it the side edge or I think it's the lower edge. So on a strip of white bars. And it seems like at that point, they're not converging properly.
You can see separation.
You can see separation. I think I need to get you some pictures or something to show you.
Yeah, so the good thing about the BVM, and we could talk about this a little bit, the BVM is so much better than the PVM, literally in the same size, and some of them even with the same tube. The reason like a 20M4U is not nearly as good as the BVM version, the BVM version has more controls and hardware in it that will give you additional opportunities to adjust your convergence on the lower end like that. Whereas with the 20M4U, you've only got a certain set of adjustments available, and then you can't, beyond that, you're stuck trying to add manual magnets to it. And you still may have to do that in a BVM. It's just with the BVM, it's got more powerful hardware, and it's got more precise hardware, and more controls over that precision. So you're able to go in and specifically pinpoint probably that lower section, and you can actually make a adjustment on a wheel or just like a value on the service menu, adjust that higher or lower, and you'll watch that line go in and out of convergence like that. And that's all in the deeper service menus on those BVMs, which you have to generally go past the initial
I forgot how to do that,
mode.
actually, because I got to admit, I haven't been into the deep one. And I know I've been in it, but I forgot. Because it's that thing, it's a 20E1E, I think. I think what it says. And it's that one where when you go to the main menu, maintenance is blued out or grayed out. And I know I've been into the deeper menu, but I can't.
Yeah, you have to get into the maintenance one on there.
Yeah.
And then there's always a 4-digit passcode, and I can't ever remember it. It's like all ones or all fives or all zeros. It's one of those because they change it up between monitor series. So you just type that in and it lets you in, and then you can go in. And it's interesting on those BVMs because when you go in, it tells you, like, you don't get to say, well, I want to pick just deflection. You have to pick the actual board. So it'll say, and it's the physical board that's in the back. It'll be labeled, and it says, all right, you're going to this board to control these features. So that way you kind of do know which, you're like, well, these features are directly related to that board. And if I'm having an issue with that feature, it might be because caps are going bad on that board, right? Yeah. So you could say, well, if I know I'm maintaining or checking some things in maintenance, it's not really working. There's a possibility that helps you troubleshoot the board that needs to be maintained. But like you'll go in, and that's in the maintenance mode. Normally, you can go in and you can do a setup or adjustments in just the main front end of the menu on the BVM still, and it will give you about half of the convergence controls.
Okay.
So you have all that, and then on top of that, you have a yoke that you can physically manipulate the yoke. It'll have a few potentiometers in it. So they just gave you more opportunities and more options to choose and be able to fine tune an image.
Sure. So that BVM, I've recently got out of my storage. It's been sitting in storage, I would say probably 18 months. Now, I had to move it from my previous place, get my car, get it to the storage room, blah, 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 car back. And it was dealt with nicely. It wasn't thrown around like a UPS package. Nevertheless, it was still moved and still there. What over time can cause that sort of convergence issue? Do you think it was just a thing that might happen as components age, or does that lead to you think maybe I bumped it somewhere along the way?
Well, that's a good question. And the transport of a CRT can always affect the look of it, the geometry, where it could need recalibration after you move it. Sometimes you hope that's not the case, but let's face it, if it gets put next to a big magnetic item, it's going to need some kind of servicing, because then, like the one, that's probably what happened in the shipment I got. It could have been set next to a magnet.
You would know. Okay, yeah.
Right, because like you'd see it on the screen. Or so here's the thing. These machines were periodically, especially like a BVM, periodically checked by a technician like Pat, and somebody who worked with Pat, right? Save on Pat. They would go in to these studios and they'd be like, okay, it's time for me to calibrate and check on your machine. You'd pay me a service fee. I'd give you a certification that says it's in good standing, right? And it's been calibrated. And then you keep those service records, kind of like with any machine. So that had to be done normally. And the reasoning, I think, most of the time that can throw this off is we're dealing so much with magnetism on the deflection end that the Earth's magnetism can affect screens. We've seen that happen. So over time, that magnetism may be shifting around in your environment. You could bring in new machines, new power sources that affect that. And over time, it will just eventually also caps start to wear out. So all this combination of things on this hardware, it could cause it to where, well, okay, now we just need to make a few adjustments to all the way up to eventually repairing and replacing parts of the machine. And then ultimately saying, hey, this thing needs to be taken out of commission, and we'll bring in the new BVM, PVM that is offered to you on a business standpoint.
Sure. So
that's where we're recreating this environment ourselves by moving it, by having things around it, changing power supplies, or even plugs in the wall. Anything like that can affect that.
How do you, when you are keeping a BVM such as this, I've got there's the on-off, it's on my remote, or it could also be, like, I mean it's soft on-off, not like a PVM where it's got that hard click on and off. The BVM has that soft on-off, so if I click off, there's still a little red light at the bottom. But I think I still, kind of by habit, I reach around the back and I flick the master switch on the back. What are your thoughts about how to, let's say you use the BVM once a day, once every 2 days. And what's your thoughts on how to have the power switches on off?
That's a good one. So here's my kind of thoughts on this thing. I personally, I don't leave them plugged in and like turned on. Now, I do understand this was made, if you think about it, again, this was made as a convenience feature for the original clientele of these machines, where they did not want to go behind the machines and physically turn individual ones off, so they could, use a button and turn them off mostly, but they also didn't want them to have all this warm-up time. They wanted to try to limit the warm-up time and things, so you could keep it in the standby mode. My thoughts on it at this point is, if you're not using it a whole ton, I don't think you should really leave it on. I think it's fine to turn it off. And the reason being is twofold. You're not just sending in phantom power. I don't know that it's using any phantom power when it's in standby mode. I can check that with my new little meter that I've got.
Oh, wait, I have one of those too. I can
like where you could check voltage and see. We could check voltages and see if it's running phantom power when it's in that standby mode. And if it is, then you're having right.
I just got one like this, and it gives you can even input the cost of power, and it'll tell you over time
how much it costs,
which doesn't work for me because my power is variable and changes each hour. But anyway, sorry, Steve.
No, but that's the exact thing I was going to say. If it's drawing power in phantom power mode, then technically you're putting wear and tear on your capacitors. And then also at the same time, you're leaving it at risk for something to happen. Like where I live, if there's a flood and there's water in my basement, if it's plugged in and turned on, it will fry out. Or if there's a power surge or my house gets struck by lightning, then it's plugged in, it's going to have a power surge and it could blow it up. If it's off, that's going to make it harder for that to happen. So
are there any then negatives in the switching of power? So, for example, I just, again, out of sheer autistic habit, if I'm using the BVM, I will soft turn it off at the top, let the little light go red on the monitor, and then reach around the back and switch off the master power. Is there anything to doing it in that, or can I just come along anytime and just pull the master power?
No, that's not going to do anything different. Because what you can do is, and this will be done too, like I have my handheld BKM11R, which is the remote control.
Yep.
But it's the handheld one.
Oh, you got the handheld one. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could use the handheld one or the 10R, but they're both or the same, controller. The BVM tubes would not be sold with a controller in them unless you bought that package. So you could go in and you'd tell your BVM to do whatever. And then you just pull the controller out and it'll stay in that mode.
Okay.
And in that setting. And then at that point, that's the only way you can turn it off is clicking the power off in the back. The advantage to this, I think, is the fact that you would have the remote access to be able to power it on closer to wherever your remote controls are set up. That could be at the bottom of the monitor, or that could be at a cabinet in a studio. And then you had you had that, and also again the less warm up time because there's in a standby mode where it doesn't. I mean, it still does initialize when you turn it on, and it does the same initializing thing. That's why I feel like maybe there actually is nothing doing, but I would still think that there would need to be some kind of phantom power draw to illuminate even just that LED.
Even the light. I'm going to try that as well. Let's both try that.
Yeah, I'll try that.
How much
too
is it pulling? On at least on standby mode. So okay,
that wouldn't have been something that they were care about, cost wise. I'm sure in the 90s when these were in use, they would think, well, the convenience of having the power button at the control deck is worth the phantom power.
And there's no, and I guess the major thing was there's no problems from going on to off, just like hard off, equivalent of pulling the plug straight out of the wall. So that isn't doing anything. It just makes me feel better, really.
Yeah, well, also think about this. I mean, I know we kind of the 8-inch ones, the portable ones took such a pounding, I know that people would have been just ripping. Could you imagine just ripping those cords out of the back? They didn't care if they were turned on or off. Probably just pull it out, whatever. I'm sure that happened all the time.
Because they also had, well, that's an interesting one, because we were talking here about soft on and offs here on the BVM series. But yeah, on the PVM, it's that button that's on the bottom left, and it's a hard on or off, like it's just cutting power.
It's a real switch, and that's exactly what you're doing on the BVM. It's with the back switch. It's the same kind of thing. It's literally just that's straight where the power goes in, and it's closing that gap, letting your AC hit the power supply. So that gap remains closed. So now there's something else that's like closing that gap. It's not the manual switch. That's why I feel like leaving it in standby mode, and then like a lightning strike hits, and that would blow out whatever that standby mode switch is and cause probably all kinds of damage, right? Possibly. Just like if it struck and your computer was plugged in or something. So that's
Sure, so sensible ways to protect, for example, against overload or spike or something like that. The further away, like your switch should be as far away from the important bit as possible. In general, like an even better solution, like going further from this, would be to turn off the switch on the power board or turn off the switch at the wall, for example. Then the spike has even less chance of getting all the way to your monitor. And if you let it all the way into standby mode, well, then you're letting it real close to important shit before you're cutting the switch. So
yeah, so if you have now this happens a lot in PVM, because again we were talking about shipping and some kind of little shipping damage. So let's say you get a PVM, those little buttons are on the bottom and they can break, and a lot of the times they'll get pushed into on and then snap off. So they're just stuck in the on position. Okay. Now, other times they'll be stuck in the off position. And so then you know, and it's getting really hard and expensive to just find even a replacement switch. Like I'm talking, sometimes I've seen them go as from $50 to $120 for these, just the switch assembly. So instead, you could wire in a different switch that does the same thing and have it external. I've also seen a guy go and take it to an electrician, and they did, they cut a hole in the side of his PVM and installed one of those big flap switches, and that was how it powered on, and then they just left the front blank, and he didn't care. So that's the flip switch was there, and that was kind of a hideous job that was done to that. So like, but you can do that, or since it's just like, even if you removed the switch altogether, you could literally trip that connection point on the little connector there and just bridge that so that it's always on when power goes into it. And then, like you say, then just use your surge protector and hit on off at the surge protector to kill the power to the PVM. So I've seen many times where that might be another solution some people are just dealing with right now. It's just leaving it on and turning it off at the power supply.
Okay. Oh, I like this. Wait, okay, so while we're on topics of, like, how to say, voodoo that we have around how we deal with these devices, you know, we've got our little habits, and we know I turn off this and then do this and so forth. And we've all got, I think, our little routines, let's say. But it's good to hear some more facts about it. One of my little voodoo thoughts about this is if I need to rotate the monitor, and this is probably more for 14-inch, not this 20-inch behemoth. If I need to rotate the monitor on its side for tate mode, I will turn the monitor off first. What's your thoughts on this? It
has to be turned off first. It always should be turned off first, because if you do turn it, there's a good chance you're just all the colors are gonna bleed out. And you'll literally turn it and watch the colors purity just go blah, and then like half the screen will turn a different color and invert in colors. And it's just, but if you turn off the monitor, move it, turn it back on, then it's ready to be in that position. Again, I don't know what it is, but something about shifting that, like that in that orientation can throw it off. It doesn't happen every time, but it definitely will happen. So it's always best to power off and then switch to the tate mode.
All right.
Maybe I could rig up like a spinning wheel CRT that just like rotates and you can see the color change like this. But then
That's
like
cool.
what are you gonna do with what would you do? You'd have to have the cables rotate and everything behind it.
I mean, you could rotate it, at least try. It could go like 180 without it being.
Yeah, like I just meant like it would be cool to have like a 8-inch PVM that just sat there on a like a rotisserie or like a sideways
Yeah, dude, you need to tell your friends at the art museum about this. They'll love that stuff. Oh, that's super artistic.
Man, like why am I not think of it? What are those heroes? Those little sandwiches, the lamb.
Like kebab
like, let's put a stick on there and turn
hey,
it
mate,
sideways.
I got my PVM over here. You want the PVM? No problems.
Yeah.
I got some boss. I got some tabbouleh on there. I got no problems.
What if I could cook some kind of meat off the heat from a PVM? There you go. Could like meat around it and then have the tube in the middle.
Dude, that's where society's going right now. Everything is in the trash can. Power costs a lot. Food costs a lot.
Yeah.
Us retro gamers are sitting here. We don't know how to eat. We don't have a stove left, but we've got a BVM left. People are writing to you, Steve, I've got 2 eggs. How can I cook them on a PVM? I've got a PS3. How can I make a salad?
I've been so consumed with like that power stuff now that I went and I was telling you and Bob, I snuck around my Costco and I was just filming a couple seconds on all these TVs they have there because they have all these huge TVs, and I could actually the ones I would film was the ones I could go behind and then film the label so I could see how much power they're rated to take. And they're all rated to take twice as, I mean, this is no secret. They're rated twice as much as like most PVMs and BVMs. So they're actually using more energy
than a CRT.
Yeah.
I mean, like in watts, what they're pulling.
Right.
Okay, they'll cost you twice as much. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, and I don't know. The only thing I can't do is I can't go plug in my verification tool and see how much drawing, because when I'm like on a PVM, it's not going to draw that maximum wattage unless it's like an all white screen, and you don't want to run an all white screen. You'll watch it and it'll run at like 60 to 70% of that rating most of the time, and then you'll have peaks when something shows that more power is being pulled. You'll see that on your little. It's
literally
tool
down
there.
to that. A white screen. We're gonna have to test this now. A white
no,
screen will pull more.
It should, yeah, because it's every gun firing at brightness the highest, and so.
Makes sense. And an LC doesn't work like that, so it's always just pulling a larger. Whatever it does.
I think it probably is just, but I don't know. I can't verify.
Sure.
I could verify it with the modern crappy TVs I have in my house that I've bought from Costco. That's the only thing I was going to say. So whenever I put all this together on power, because I think I want to make that kind of as like a video, the myth busting of the power consumption for CRT, because people are always like, oh, you know, people naturally would think that a CRT would take up more energy. However, you may be able to prove sometimes that using a CRT could take as much as some lamps in the house that you leave on all day.
This is really good, because I was just about to do that. I just got this meter thing that you plug in that I showed you, and that was the next thing I was going to get around to, because I was like, I bet you that BVM is sucking a lot of power. But
BVMs will suck more power than the PVMs.
Oh,
yeah, they definitely will.
Sure. Okay,
but they're also meant to be highly efficient and not just wildly. You know, these are the best of designs.
Sure.
For them.
And also, if I think about even where I got my BVM from. So my BVM, and I know I've told you this story before, Steve, came from an outside broadcast truck. So old school semi-trailer, if you can imagine that, and the back wall, I guess the closest to the front compartment, was a wall of CRTs. So the main monitor was this 20-inch one in the middle, and then it had a row. I think either side had 2 14 inches. I can't remember. There was a number either side. Let's say at least 4 14 inches either side, and then a number of those smaller 8 inches. And the size of a truck. So that is not uncommon to see that many monitors all working together. That completely could happen in a regular inside studio as well. And they all have to pull power just like that. Because I think... the one time that I've been inside a modern outside broadcast van, the same blokes that I got this one from, they showed me their more modern ones. And they don't have, 10, 12 screens. They just have one fuck off huge screen. And then the software segment. The software is dividing it, right, as it goes in. So they don't need a million monitors. They just need one. So that would be interesting to know that for screen area versus power usage, maybe the new modern solution draws less because it's that one screen doing the whole wall, basically, where before they had 15 CRTs. Even
though that one screen is more than an individual monitor.
Right.
Because, I mean, this is just for like us being at home using these things in secondary nature. Because like you say, you're exactly right. Whenever somebody would rent that van from that production studio and they would go out to a job site, they had to have, like, here's the requirement of amperage we need to run the van.
Sure.
And it would have to be enough to power all those monitors and all that equipment consistently. So you'd have to go back and, it'd be easy to figure out. You go back and you add up all the amps and watts and convert that to amps on the back of the equipment. And then you could go and say, well, this, we have however many amps provided from our outlet.
Yeah.
So that's, and that's a very normal thing that's always going to be dealt with running so much equipment. So now you're probably right. They're allowed to say it's less weight, less equipment, less overall power draw, probably.
Definitely. And, my experiences, I only physically entered this. Well, I physically entered this broadcast van truck. So as much as I have understood, it was constructed for the Beijing Olympics. Whenever it's 2000, or was that the first one or after that? Anyway, so it would have been one of the last units constructed from CRTs. And I think not long after, it was like, why did we do this? Why did we build a new truck out of CRTs? And I do know that it was very cramped in there because the monitors take up room. And I just remember the boys giving me the tour of the more modern broadcast van. And I remember thinking, like, it was more like being on a private jet. It was nice and things, and there's just a small little monitor and there's much room for a big table. And I mean, literally the outside broadcast van that I took these monitors from was used in the movie Tenet.
Really?
Yeah, with that. Yeah. So, because that was all filmed here in Tallinn, and they needed a shot of some shitty old Soviet-looking kind of room. And I know that, and I think I got into it afterwards, after I'd been there before, and then after they got into it, and it was a fucking shit mess. The crew had pulled monitors out, but my 20-inch BVM was still there, so I got that. But they kind of completely demolished it to do Tenet to make it look really shitty. But I do remember going in there for the first time, and it had been sitting there for about 10 years or so before that. What's your feeling on... I was talking to my friend about this. My friend, one of my colleagues, and she was telling me, she's saying, Lewis, you rent a storage room? I'm like, yeah. She's like, yeah, well, I need a storage room because I've got to put all my clothes in there. You know, she's a woman, so right on. She's got a lot of stuff, no problems. But she's like, but it has to be like at room temperature. And I was like, what? Your dresses need to be temperature controlled? What sort of fucking dresses do you have? And she's like, no. I just need
moths, right?
I just need it to be not zero so the mold doesn't come in. And I said, I can't help you because where I rent from, it's not temperature controlled. But at the same time, it's freezing, but not super terrible because it's inside of an old concrete Soviet warehouse. And then there's rows of shipping containers, and I have a shipping container. And so it's never it's cold, but it does insulate it a bit. But what's your thoughts on storing CRTs in, let's say, very cold, freezing or below environments? Are these things, is cold good? Because heat's not good. Is cold good?
There's a temperature rating on both ends.
Okay.
So, and that is actually spelled out in the monitors. And it'll tell you specifically a storage temperature.
Storage, not operating storage.
They'll tell you both the temperatures. It'll tell you the safe operating temperature and the safe storage temperature.
I gotta look that up. Okay.
So what we can do is, and I don't know, I was actually going to see if I had any manuals easy to access. We could probably
anything there
find
that
one.
just sort of what's a typical.
But there's it's not like when you're using it, it has to be above freezing for sure.
Okay, yeah,
while it's in use, right?
That sounds fairly
reasonable. But you can store it, I know, under the. You can store it under that temperature. See, here we go. Under scan degauss, right? Notes. It's like how many pages do you have to go through before it actually tells you the right information on here? So, but you definitely have to look at that. And then the same thing is if it's also going to be humidity is going to play a factor as well on that. And I'm not sure exactly where it's saying that in here, but it definitely, it's in like the. See, I just went through.
Well, that's one thing I do know. It's very dry around here. It's not like a hot. Humid.
Yeah, so where I was at in Tennessee, it would
often
get extremely humid. So you're not going to have the same. I'm trying to find it, but I'm not really doing good at locating it at the moment. But that's a good point to make. If you're concerned about anything like that, definitely check your service manual. But for good rule of thumb, I believe it can get down to about 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of them. Okay. Without trouble.
Jeez, I got to type that in so I can see.
Yeah,
what that is
so 0, that's freezing.
20 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's a little bit below freezing. So it's like, I don't know, was it a couple degrees below 0 in Celsius?
Wow, jeez. 20 Fahrenheit equals minus 6.5. So about 6 or 7, minus 6 or 7 or so.
Yeah, it's pretty much okay, and then it goes up where it can get up to pretty much above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. So it can handle both. But again
storage we're talking about here.
Yeah, and again, if you're in somewhere, now this is another thing. For years, the militaries around the world, for example, in America, if they had equipment that they had surplus equipment, jets, tanks, anything like that, they're going to take them to the drier areas of the country to sit for a reason. They don't let them sit out in Georgia where it's swampy and down in Tennessee. It's going to be out west in these vast open airways. Now, the temperature, overall ambient temperature gets higher. However, the lack of humidity does not add extra. It actually is safer for the machine. So if you're in an environment where it is really hot, if you don't have a lot of humidity, you're going to be better off, and vice versa. If you have a lot of humidity, it's going to be much more of a detriment. It doesn't really matter the temperature, okay? So that's important. Plus, either way, if you do have a PVM, BVM, any CRT in a storage facility that's in anywhere near that temperature, you need to bring that in and let that get down to the ambient temperature before you click it on. Don't ever pull it out of cold storage in 0 degrees and or that -6 Celsius, and then just go pull it inside and just plug it in and pop it on, because that voltage surge could crack the glass possibly or something. I mean, it's like you don't want to.
You do that. You told me that a bit, that you had to bring the monitor downstairs.
Yeah, I was always, and when I was in Tennessee too, it would get so humid, the humidity would change between outside and inside, that I could bring a monitor inside and it would be covered in condensation. And then I had to wait another couple of days for it to get back to normal almost.
So, you said to come up to room temperature was days.
Well, no, this is if you would take it from one environment, like a humid environment, to another, and you would bring it in, and then all of a sudden it would get coated in a humidity.
Okay, if it's got humidity on it, yeah.
If it got covered in dew, then I didn't want to go turn it right on. I had done that before, and it would the PVM, it was one of mine, and I was like, holy crap, I didn't realize I just turned that on, and it didn't start normally. It would just and I was like, crap, did I just kill it? And no, I let it come in. I left it for a day, and then I turned it on and powered normally. So thankfully, it didn't damage it, but you'll definitely, see something if you tried to turn it on. That's what I did while it was covered in
Sure. Okay. If there's moisture around, definitely.
Yeah,
that
right.
makes sense. If there's physical moisture on the outside of the monitor, this is not a good sign.
No. So anyway, let's kind of like circle around here, and then so what? I know that we'll probably do after maybe something. We'll try to do an interview next. But what I've got the conference coming up at the end of this month, I think, for the Music City Multicon in Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
So that'll be a convention. That'll be fun and interesting. I'm going to meet Chris from Displaced Gamers there, and he's actually going to Portland to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo this weekend. And so we should have some good discussion on like the economic community of a lot of these shows, because I'm under the impression after going to Connecticut that honestly a lot of people's disposable income is dropping and discretionary income right now. And so a lot of these conventions, we were talking about how people had high-priced items and at the same time no one was buying anything. And I want to talk to Chris about how it looks in Portland, and then finally we'll see how it is in October, in Nashville, and kind of look at some things and vendors there and see what the trend is of are vendors' prices dropping, and at the same time, are people even buying this stuff right now? Is this stuff even moving that much? So I'm really interested to see that, and I think that we'll report back. I mean, soon.
I think I'm looking
on
forward
that.
to hearing what you find out about that, because to me, just from what you've said, it sounds like the smashing together of the online market and the physical market. And the online market is maybe, let's say, even if you're shipping to mainland America, well, okay, that's how that can grow. But when then you cut it down, you say, well, I'm only taking people in this geographic area. Well, maybe not. So they've got prices that maybe if they put it on eBay and there's some other eBay kind of buyer and da-da-da. But I think when you get local, that doesn't work as much. If I buy local, I don't want to buy why would I buy an eBay price for local? I'll go buy an eBay price than that. So there has to be some disconnect between online prices and eBay prices. And it sounds like because we're getting back to conferences, because we're getting back to live events after so long, those still have a little bit of equilibrium to discover.
Right. And a lot of people now, I can tell that a lot of people, their discretionary income was like getting the family of kids and taking them to this show. Right.
Okay.
And so that was the discretionary income, buying the pass and then paying for parking and then paying for lunch. And that is the discretionary income. So many of them, we're never going to buy really anything anyway. They're just walking around, browsing, shopping, looking at prices. And as opposed to the internet, where you've got a potential buyer at any moment with the capital to be there and buy it. Whereas, like you say, half the marketplace is coming there to do something on a local, smaller event. So you have to entice them to buy your merchandise most of the time with a lower price than what the listing is online.
I would think so.
Most of the time. Unless it's a specifically, again,
sure,
unless it's like a restored PVM.
An outlier,
right?
or something like that. Something professionally serviced, but overall prices. Yeah, so these guys are coming to conferences. And I really remember that story that you were telling from the last the one in Las Vegas, that you guys
Or
were
the Connecticut.
Was it? Whatever. What was the last one where you met Bob and you met everyone?
Yeah, it was Connecticut.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know.
Oh, it's
cities.
fine.
But yeah, anyway, that there was this real, vendors were leaving products on the table. They weren't being sold by the final day. I mean, capitalist theory tells us they will change. Those vendors just simply to put food on the table cannot keep leaving stock on the table like that.
You can't. What happens is they'll either just not go to the shows and somebody else will come in their place and sell for cheaper, or this will all balance out sometime, right?
Sure.
It's just right now we're still in this transition period of just crazy economics where prices on certain items that are essential are just shooting up through the roof. And at the same time, this glut of collectibles and things that people were wasting kind of their money on when they had a bunch of money. Now you're going to have more of these things coming out. I mean, it's not. I've been on YouTube a couple of times this last week, and there's all kinds of stories on there right now of the crashing of these. Have you seen this? The crashing of the prices for these graded video games.
I've heard a bit. It's definitely flattening. Yeah. It's not going up as high as it was,
a lot of them are dropping 75% from their peaks. Oh. And that is such an enormous drop that there's no conceivable way that like a Mario 64 sealed box game that's graded high goes for a record amount, and then that copy sells the next year and a half later at a drop of like 70%. There's no way it's ever going to get back to that original high level. At the same time, you've got new people going out there and finding, you could still find that kind of a game and grade it now. There's still going to be a new inventory of these graded games coming onto the market and the secondhand market, and everybody's going to be scrambling. It's literally going to be like a folding over. It almost feels like maybe possibly Beanie Baby style, but it's hard to say because I don't really know anybody personally that's like in the high stakes game of investing thousands upon thousands of dollars on sealed vintage video games. I just don't know anybody.
And the X factor you sort of were getting close towards there is there market manipulation being done
by
and
I think that's probably
and those companies that Carl Jobs videos have educated us so much about, right, which you can say, well, fine, is the 1.2. I'm never buying something for 1.2 million. I'm never buying something for many, even multiple thousands. So what does it affect me? But when we see that market moving up and up, it drags up the lower end. It drags up the cost of that shitty Mario 64 cartridge. It drags up the cost of everything. And that's the problem with that level of market manipulation. Now, I hope that anyone who has bought a graded game, anyone who's doing that, understands either I'm buying this game because I love it. I just love it. And I bought it for, I have this much money and that's okay. And I've just bought it. I just like it sitting there on the shelf. Gee, it looks cool. And grading can be useful, for example, if I'm buying online. So I don't know what it's coming. You know, if there was a graded PVM, well, then it would be trapped in a sealed case and I would know exactly what I'm getting. So some people like to buy graded because they know exactly the quality that it's coming for. So also very legitimate things. But if you're getting into that, just thinking, oh, I'm going to make some money, or these
thinking it's going to go up or something.
It's going to go up. You're in a speculative market. Yes, they go up and they go down. And guess what? They're going down now. These are not established antiques. These are not established stable markets. They're pure speculative.
It's pure speculation. Yeah, it's not moving because it can be manipulated. It's obvious that it can always be manipulated, and there's just no regulation. Where it's like the stock market, you know, that can be manipulated too, but there's regulation, and that people get in trouble for doing things they shouldn't be doing all the time. Companies do. So there's not this idea that these markets are not manipulated in some way is really naive if you think that. And the other thing is just, there's a lot of people that probably put a lot of money into things that, you know, I've done it too. I put money into things that I regret and have gotten burned on. And if it's like, you just need to make sure that if you're trying to take on something as an investment, be ready that it's going to be a divestment too. Basically, it could go to nothing. And like you get into stocks and they're like, all right, be prepared for 5 to 10% just like immediate loss on this. If that's very common, and sure that happens. But see, like this stuff, there's no guarantee on any of it. You know, it could turn to nothing. And like you said, it's dragged up stuff into stupid values where you could go, and it used to be almost sometimes like you go somewhere, find a used Super Nintendo game, and it might have like the crappiest box with it, right? A crappy box that's like taped up, written on junk. And it like you couldn't the seller at the store couldn't even ask anything extra for it, pretty much. Maybe like $5 extra for it at the most. Well, nowadays it's like, no, man, this is still a CIB copy, partially CIB. And so it's like, give me a break. There's like, you could sneeze on this box and it's going to fall to pieces. So we have to, if you actually just care about having some of this stuff, it's just, you should be happy that this is kind of finally going to happen, because I feel like we'll probably go to where a lot of this stuff is going to taper off in value. And so if you actually do want to buy it, maybe this time next year, there'll be fire sales of this stuff, Maybe.
This is where I would cycle around again. I know, God, we've gone an hour 40, but to cycle back around to the beginning, and one of the reasons that I like most of my collection is Japanese. And I bought it myself in Japan because, one, I go there, it's an adventure, I have a great time, that's what I like to do. I have stories, each individual item, I can almost tell you remember the store and the place, and that's a memory, and that lives inside of me. But shit's way cheaper in Japan too, and they don't have a retro speculative bubble, not quite in the same way that we do. They're exporting a lot. I did a podcast with Vink in Japan asking about how they see this stuff. So to go there and to find that is like, I've probably, how to say, if you want to pay several thousands on a collection, and I don't mean on an item, I mean, let's say we've all spent several thousands on our collection over the years that we've been doing this. Pay for a flight ticket to Japan, buy a couple of suitcases worth of stuff. You pay the same amount as you may have bought to ship it over here, but you'll have an awesome time going over there. You'll feel like you got it yourself. You feel like you didn't get ripped off by some seller. What I'm saving, I'm paying in flight tickets and accommodation, and I think somewhere in the middle it evens out. But I've also had these great experiences and this adventure around what I do. So think of Japan. That gives you a more emotional connection to something, or like you said, that's the only reason anybody most of the time wants to keep stuff, is if there's some kind of connection where you get onto a good point, because grading, like I have few graded items, and like comic books. I had talked to you about how we sent off some ball cards to be graded, but it's not like a huge portion of my collection at all. But also, like, there's a story behind almost each one of those graded items. Like now, one of them is something that I got in a store and got a good deal on. And eventually my plan is to sell it, right? And it's like just a piece, and I've got a certain amount of money, but I remember the whole story of me getting it, finding it in the store, buying it, and then like holding on to it and thinking, maybe this will be worth some more. But then there's other items. There's like one that I was in Florida, and it's like a worthless 90s comic book. I sent it off to get graded with two other books that were part of my dad's collection from a kid. Like I found these two cool books that I thought were really cool. I graded both of them, and then one of them was a nice Batman, and I graded it to pay for all the grading fees. Okay. Like I knew I could grade it, and then it would sell. And I did that. I paid, and so that was the plan. And then I was going to keep this other book that I thought from my dad's collection. I clipped this 90s book because it was something my son and I picked out when he was like 5 in a boutique. And it was like 50 cents. It's not even good to grade it or nothing. Yeah. So, and then I have the one investment piece. And it's the same kind of almost thing with a lot of that stuff. It's dependent on what you want to do with it. If it's something you're strictly buy to sell, then you've got to be, ready to do that, and be in the mindset for that. And then, but like you say, if you go and you go and explore and get items, you remember those items, why you got it, where you got it, how you found it, whatever the story is. And some of that, that's a lot more personable of a collection, right? It's a lot more personalized collection as opposed to, well, I just wanted to get every single game for this one system, so I just bought every time one came available online, I just bought it, right? Then you're not
You don't say, oh, wow, well, this was the eBay listing that showed up on October 5th, 2019 that just changed my life, right? They never.
Yeah, sure.
No one's ever told me a story like that. But you could say it could be the most trivial item in someone's collection. And you're like, well, why is this one so meaningful to you? And that's a great
actually, because I was about to make fun of our friend Roger, the 8-bit Esquire. I was about to say, yeah, exactly. It's fucking shitheads like Roger that all they do is they sit at home with their lawyer's salary and eBay, eBay. But then I remembered he's got the awesome buying the PVM from the crackhead story. So I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fine, that's you win. You win. You can order for eBay for the rest of your life because you bought a PVM from a crackhead. So okay.
Yeah, you're right on the money. It's like there's no emotional. That I feel like a lot of what happened is people did get into a mode of coming into some extra funds, if whatever the reason was. They bought a bunch of stuff. And they do not have that emotional connection, right? They look around at the stuff and they say, what have I done or something sometimes. And they kind of get depressed. And I think that is normal, but it's also kind of disappointing. It's like, because then you might lose somebody. Like I'll see people say, oh, I'm selling off all my monitors. Somebody's like really passionate about it at one point. And then for whatever reason, it's just like, I'm done. And so it's almost like, man, it stinks to see people go, but it's a normal part of a hobby.
Yeah,
you just
come and go.
I don't know.
All right, mate. Why don't we? I'm smelling some cooking in the background, so I might get some tucker. So what are you gonna do with the day? What do you got around for the rest of the day?
I've got to finish my video here on the eBay stuff.
Oh yeah,
I gotta film an intro and an outro for that. And then I need to get in the shop at some point. They're doing some work for the rest of the week. Right. So we'll see.
We can't all be on vacation forever. No, you got to get back to work.
I got a buttload of CRT stuff to do. So what about you?
It's dinner time here, so I'll have that. I'm chilling out. And then already tomorrow I need to... heading off on the adventure to look after Jimmy Carr, the comedian here. Yeah. So tomorrow his tech guy flies in early. We'll go to Tartu. That's where the show is. Just chill out for the night. And then it's a Tartu show. Then we're back to Tallinn. Then by Saturday, we're in Helsinki. 2 shows there. Then Sunday morning, my job is to get them all to the airport and then get myself home. So I'm happy to be doing I get a little trip and stuff over the next few days. Be fun. And there is
Sun stories.
There's a dude in Helsinki, Finland, who runs an arcade on the outside of the center a little bit, and you pay like $10 and it's free entry. And I'm hoping to get a few hours in there on Saturday afternoon. So I'll be.
There you go.
That. All good, mate.
Awesome.
Anyway, it's good to talk to you, mate. I'm glad we got a chance to catch up.
Yeah. Till the next adventure. We'll see.
Indeed. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. Like and subscribe and all the good stuff. See you next time.
See you next time.